When I first came to Aquavit, we started up a bread program. Back then, every bread was bought from a commissary, which is something that's very usual in New York. So at any opportunity that I can, I always love to say that every bread that's in the restaurant is baked in-house.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Just because Michael Stillman's father is Alan Stillman, founder of the Smith & Wollensky's and TGI Fridays chain, Just because Michael Stillman's father is Alan Stillman, founder of the Smith & Wollensky and TGI Fridays chains, doesn't mean he grew up wanting to go into the family business. Indeed, Michael grew up in the business, but it took some time for him to get to where he is today, operating Quality Branded, the restaurant group behind Quality Italian, Quality Meats, Don Angie, Bad Roman, and many more. On this episode, we talk about the current restaurant climate and what inspires Michael to dive headfirst into a restaurant concept. It's a really cool talk. And before that, I speak with the incredible chef Emma Bengtsson. Emma is the chef and partner of Aquavit, which is one of my favorite restaurants in New York. Emma and I talk about her cooking career, which started in Sweden and landed in New York City. We talk about her expert baking, what she enjoys about running a busy kitchen, and much more from one of New York's top chefs. I hope you enjoy this episode. Emma Bengtsson, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I don't know you that well, but I've been following your career in New York for a long time, and Aquavit is one of our city's best restaurants, hands down. 2 Michelin stars, a decade going, and man, we have a lot to cover. Tell me a little bit about what food was like growing up in Sweden. I think we have perceptions about Swedish cuisine in America. We have plenty of Swedish American culture here as well. But for you, what was food like?
Growing up, food has always been home cooked for me. Grandma, mom, everyone was brilliant cooks. A lot of cooking from scratch. Grew up on the countryside, but it was also very rare off. It was like on weekends or holidays or special occasions. I was so active when I was young. I never sat still for 1 second. I think my basic food category, was sandwiches. I think that was the only thing my mom could actually get me to grab on the way out the door every day. So I've been fortunate. I've been very lucky to grow up on the West Coast with all the fresh seafood and the farmers, and very, very little comes out of a can situation.
That's really interesting because I think we have perceptions about Swedish cuisine. You know, Stockholm has got such a robust restaurant scene, and Malmö's got a multicultural cuisine and amazing place to visit. But when you get out to the country, less is known. What are the dishes that you would consider Swedish country cooking?
Very heartwarming. A lot of potatoes, carrots, onions, cabbage, a lot of those hearty, feel-good vegetables, and in general, a lot of seafood. I think we don't eat that much meat, not as much as I've seen in over here.
Yeah.
But I think it's just more like family style vibe over dishes on the countryside.
Are there flavors that define Sweden? Like are we talking about certain acids, spices? I'm really curious because I think there's so much perception versus reality here.
Well, our food is very salt heavy, which is interesting because I never really thought about it living in Sweden. And then I moved to New York, and for every year I live here and eat less and less salt, it gets harder and harder for me to go home. And every time I do travel back to Sweden, I feel like, oh my God, this is so salty. And I see my family putting more salt on it. And I'm like, this is crazy. But it's just born into our culture, the salt, the acid. And I think when you live in colder climates and it's in your DNA, you kind of just live with it without having problems with it.
Yeah.
But it does become a little bit prominent when you move here. And that's something I still struggle a little bit when it comes to my cuisine, the way I cook. I still use a lot of salt, a lot of acid. And I've kind of developed this little test where we start each meal off with bites that are very pronounced and very the way I cook. And very early in the meal, we normally figure out who of the guests are like, can we not add any extra salt? And then I can pull back.
That's really interesting. So let's actually move to Aquavit, and we're talking about in the main dining room, which is a prefix tasting. What are some of these early bites that we're thinking about that would really get people like this test that you give?
So right now we have a herring cake to start, and there's no extra salt in it. It's just a herring in itself. But that's one of those things where it comes out really fast if a guest is very shy on their salt. And then I can adapt to the rest of it. And we also like to start off every meal with a chilled or warm broth situation, depending on the season. And that is also a nice little kick to it in the beginning. So it's, in my opinion, I feel like it's a little clever way to figure out where I have my guests.
I like that. It's a smart way to test it. I wish more chefs would do that and adjust in midstream. Northern European cooking to me, obviously lots of seafood, prodigious farms, clean lines, and cuisine that you could call, muted in a positive way versus foods of, say, Southeast Asia that uses a lot of natural seasoning, salts, fish sauces, and tropical vegetables and tropical fruits. And also in Northern Europe, I think about the incredible baking, and this leads to the beginning of your career was in pastry, and you were working at prominent restaurants around Sweden as a pastry chef, and then were recruited to come to New York. So tell us a little bit about that pastry background of yours, and then a little bit about what drew you to New York and what you were feeling when you got that phone call.
So I went to culinary school. I did 3 years in Stockholm, and my goal was to go into savory. I had absolutely no interest in pastry. But my first internship, on day one, I got hijacked by their pastry chef. He needed someone to help him, and I got stuck. And those 3 months I spent there, I realized how much pastry was grabbing at my soul. Like, this was what I was born to do, like not savory. Like, this is where my passion was. And I think pastry it's a different side. You have to be very calculating. You have to be very smart and precise. Everything needs to work. You're 2 weeks out of planning every little thing you do. And it's just a different way of working than we're talking 20, 25 years ago, when the chef world was not really all the way there into recipe cooking. So it was something that really resonated with who I was as a person, with OCDs and all of those things.
All those things that make life go on and the world turn. Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly, especially in large production kitchens, more engineering than jazz guitar, right?
Yeah.
And so you have the mindset, the grind set to be a pastry chef. And what are some of the early discoveries in that kitchen when you're baking for the first time?
I think trying to understand the science behind it and trying to understand how to fix things and how certain things come together. I think my first real aha moment was I was doing this chocolate mousse and I broke it. And it was a massive batch and I didn't want anyone to notice it. So I figured out how to fix it. And ever since then, it's a passion of mine to like, I tell everyone that comes into the kitchen, you can't really be the best until you make mistakes, because you can only learn how to get better by fixing your mistakes. If you
Mm-hmm.
never make mistakes, how boring is that? Like you have to be able to like the science around getting stuff.
Yeah, and learn how to fix through math or through just ingenuity. Back to that phone call. I mean, Aquavit's a restaurant. Back in the day, Marcus Samuelsson made his name there, went on to great acclaim. I know you were recruited by the chef that followed Marcus. And so, what's the recruitment call like? And what are you thinking about New York? Are you thinking this is a good idea right away?
Well, I've always wanted to move away from Sweden. I never felt like I fit in. So I wanted to move. My goal was to move somewhere before I turned 30. And I wasn't really in the mood of learning French or Spanish. So I was looking at English-speaking countries. And US is a very hard country to get into. And so when I got the question of joining, it wasn't really a very hard decision. I was scared to join as a pastry chef. I've always been double guessing myself in every role I take on, but it was an opportunity I just couldn't say no to.
So what's it like the first couple of years working pastry there? What's the vibe in the kitchen, and what's it like working in Aquavit with big capital A, one of the city's best restaurants?
Well, I think for me, the first year was probably one of the most stressful ones in my career. And I think a lot of it is because of myself, because I put myself to such a hard standard. Like, I did not want to fail. And I also wanted to stay, which meant I needed to be good enough to be able to land a green card. So it was hard. It was a lot of work. I had days where I literally walked to work in pajamas because I just didn't want to change.
Oh man.
Which is totally fine in New York. No one cares. I love it. So, but it settled in. I got more mature in my role. I built up a great team. And then in 2010, I got the biggest opportunity of my lifetime, but it also was one of the scariest moments of my lifetime.
Amazing. So you get promoted to the executive chef at that moment.
Well, I got promoted. I said no. But I said I will take care of it until they find another chef. Come to learn a couple years later, I realized they were never looking for another chef.
Oh, you kept checking with your ownership, and they were like, yeah. We had some meetings.
But it was a scary time. Aquavit is a known restaurant. We're 37 years old in a week from now, and it has produced some massive talents and some big chefs. And my only goal for that first 6 months was, dear God, please do not make me lose 1 star, because that would end me.
Yeah.
That was all I could think. Like, this is such a big responsibility. Yeah.
It's thank you for revealing that, because I think it's real talk about how at your level the stars mean everything. And we're talking about Michelin here specifically. Of course, New York Times is important and local media is important and all the national press is important, but especially with a restaurant with a European pedigree and so much tourism come to New York, the stars mean everything. So this leads to my question about the last decade you've held your stars. And I want to know, like, really, I'm personally curious. How do you think about keeping your stars while this city changes rapidly? The style of dining changes. Cuisines become hot and they become less hot. I just think about Korean food, the way Korean fine dining has absolutely taken over the city, and there's more than a dozen Korean restaurants that are aiming for 2 stars. So it's not just at the lower level, mid level; it's the high end. These are all becoming competitors of yours. So Emma, what's it like thinking about preserving these stars while the city changes? Do you feel like you need to change your menu, or is it not that?
I think you have to adapt and grow, uh, not just with the city, but also with yourself. You change every year as a chef. You evolve. You become hopefully wiser. And I think it's very important for a restaurant to not necessarily have to stay as a hit. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be the it restaurant every single year. I don't think that will work. I think you need to always strive to be sustainable, like, and grow with it. Like, you have to build a kitchen culture where people wants to work there. You have to keep innovating the food so that people will stay and grow with you. And I think that comes from just you always trying to be your best, and it's hard. I mean, we've been 10 years now with 2 stars, and changing the menu constantly 4 or 5 times a year. You have to find a way for the inspiration to come through.
Yeah, it's probably self-imposed inspiration. I mean, do you know that? I mean, when the inspectors are in, do you know?
I have no idea. And to be honest, I try not to care.
Hmm.
I think the right way of running a restaurant is to run it for the guests and do the best you can. Every guest is just as important, uh, whether you're 5 years old or is coming in celebrating your 60th birthday. It's every single experience for a guest has to be treated the same, whether you're an inspector or not, or a food critic. I'm cooking for the hundreds of guests that are coming into my restaurant every day. I can't just cook for that critic that come in. Then I feel like I lost myself as a chef if that's
100%.
all what I'm doing.
Especially for longevity. And in this city, longevity is rare. I mean, 3 years running a restaurant is rare in many instances, which is totally fine. If you want to move on and create new concepts, all good. But doing a decade of 2 stars is remarkable endurance. And
I'm Nomi Fry.
I'm Vincent Cunningham.
I'm Alex Schwartz, and we are Critics at Large, a podcast from The New Yorker. Guys, what do we do on the show every week?
We look into the startling maw of our culture and try to figure something out.
That's right. We take something that's going on in the culture now. Maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book, maybe it's just kind of a trend.
And we expand it across culture as kind of a pattern or a template.
Join us on Critics at Large from The New Yorker. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow wherever you get your podcasts.
tell us a little bit about the dining room and the format of like the main room, because I know you have a bar menu too, which is interesting because you can just pop in and try a few dishes. But what's it like in the main room these days? What's the style of service and format?
So we've, throughout the years, experienced with a couple of different formats. And I think what we have landed on for the last years have worked out to be a success. And in that way, we are offering a very long tasting menus where you might not see everything that goes on it, but there's also a bunch of snacks. So you'll end up spending your 2.5, 3 hours tasting through fun dishes and new and things that are a little bit more out there in produce wise. But then we also have a little bit more homey, secure 5-course menu that is a little bit more straightforward.
What are some dishes?
Yeah, you often see a cod there, and now we have a beautiful pork dish, and we sometimes do the duck. So that menu works very well for the business dinner or the family dinner where no one can really decide on sitting for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So you have that option. And in this city as well, you have to learn to adapt to all the allergies that is around. And that makes having a 5 and the chef tasting gives us a bigger playground to adapt to all the crazy allergies that's out there nowadays. And it's just getting more and more. But it's one of those feelings where you have people after the dinner who goes, "Oh my God, thank you. I can't go anywhere because they just roll their eyes and tell me they can't cook for me."
Yeah. I mean, it's real. Absolutely.
And it shouldn't. If someone has an onion allergy, I can figure it out.
I love that. I mean, can you go plant-based for the chef's tasting?
The 5 course we can do vegan.
Yeah.
The chef, we haven't got there yet.
You haven't got there
Working
yet.
on it.
You're working on
Working on
that would be amazing to know that but still, like doing a 5-course, which is, you're not a plant-based restaurant and the cuisine is not plant-based, but you can make that adjustment.
And it's important there too, not to go, let's put some vegetables on the plate.
Exactly.
Like it should still be feeling like you're getting composed, worked out dishes and not just what you found in the fridge for the day.
No doubt. I mean, and I think many vegans who listen to the show have been put in those awkward positions where they want to be out with friends and family, but have to do the plant-based option, and it becomes like asparagus on a plate, which, is fine, but like let's go. When was your last Times review?
Ooh. A while ago.
We don't need to go as precise.
I don't know the year.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm thinking like 2 new critics are here. They're going to hire a full-time critic. Who knows what that'll be? But, I mean, do you think about the New York Times critic and the reason why they should visit Aquavit?
I do, but at the same time, I don't.
Yeah.
I think that their review is important for a New York restaurant, and I would love to have them in. But at the same time, I hope that they come in and they experience it the way I want them to experience without me knowing that I'm there.
Of course.
But I mean, of course, the New York Times reviews are very important for New York restaurants and will always be. But I'll leave it up to fate.
Of course, that's a great way to look at it, and I'm just saying that because I had a delicious, amazing, exciting meal in the bar, and you have a bar menu, tab room, I don't know what you call it, like the room that's not the tasting menus, and I'd love to get your take on what that kind of means. What does that bar menu represent, and what are a few dishes that I think some of our listeners who maybe are popping into New York and want to try your food, but don't necessarily want to commit to the 5 courses even, definitely not the chef's table. But like, tell me a little bit about what they can experience.
So I think the bar, when we renovated in 2019, we created a much larger room for dining, and I wanted it to be fun and dishes that I can play with a little bit more. I can seek the homage of Swedish cuisine and explore that into dishes that might not be suited for a tasting menu, but are something that, as a Swedish person, I crave the most. So being able to come into the bar and know that the herring is there, the princess cake, gravlax, those classics, the Swedish meatballs, which is the most amazing thing.
They are amazing, by
It's
the way.
winter outside.
Very much
It's
like that.
cold. You come in and you just have a bowl of meatballs and mashed potato, and you don't have to spend 3 hours. You just get like that home feeling. So it was created to become a very warm room where you would feel almost like you're at home.
And you are doing incredible breads in there as well.
Yes. That's something I'm very proud of and very passionate about. I started when I first came to Aquavit, we started up a bread program. Back then, every bread was bought from a commissary, which is something that's very usual in New York. So at any opportunity that I can, I always love to say that every bread that's in the restaurant is baked in-house. Even the brioche loaves, the flatbread, the rye bread, the sourdough, there's nothing coming from outside.
Yeah, you wouldn't be here if honestly I didn't have an exquisite meal. Like I mean, we have a lot of restaurants here, and honestly, I say that only because I am so impressed by that meal in the bar room, and I just think really highly of not committing to the tasting and not having the perception that Aquavit is only a tasting menu, and go have that fish burger because that was really good with the cool, you had the cool bun on it too.
Yes, so we do a black garlic and poppy seed bun that we're pairing with a Chilean sea bass burger. I'm very strict. I'm almost driving my staff insane sometimes, but I hate to throw away food. Um, if I can't put it into another dish, then we eat it for family meal or I get people to take it home. But whatever it is, I don't like throwing
Why?
things out.
Why don't you like throwing it out? Why?
Oh my God. There are so many people who can't get food in this world, and we overconsume so much, especially high-end restaurants, fine dining restaurants. And I know you can see meats on the plates that we, if we send out to the dining room and we cut the ends of the duck to make it look prettier on the plate. I can promise you that all those little butts and pieces goes into every staff I have.
I mean, it's pretty good though.
So,
Pretty good though, right?
oh
I mean,
yeah. I mean, I get my protein intake every night for sure. It's just I've never liked it. It can be used for something, and that's how the burger got created.
Oh, you were using like trim.
So we cut down the sea bass so it can fit a tasting portion in the dining room. And don't get me wrong, we loved eating it for family meal, but it is a very delicious fish. So why not use it for another dish?
I mean, if the critics in the kitchen are loving it, and those are some tough critics. Your cooks are, I'm sure, not standing for a bad family meal. Why not sell it? Why not?
Right.
I have a zoom out question, and I think you're gonna give me an interesting answer because you have a really great point of view. In the 2010s, we had this moment in America where Scandinavian, Northern European cuisine was so important. It was like Relais and Noma and Geranium just in Copenhagen, and of course restaurants in throughout Sweden. Magnus Nilsson comes to mind. These are like the most coveted tables in the world, and for whatever reason, it faded, like absolutely faded. It might be because Noma has closed and we've had Renee on the show and we've talked about it, but that's only one restaurant. We're not really talking about, Northern European cuisine on a national scale. Why did it fade?
I don't think it faded. I think Nordic cuisine is very old. It's not. It was always a term that haunted me when people would say "new Nordic." I was like, "There's nothing new about
Totally.
Nordic."
It's funny.
Like we go back to the Vikings. It's nothing new about it. But I think when it comes to all kind of cuisine, you kind of go into the main lane. If you think about Italian, French, they all had their moment, and then we just love it. And then something else pops up that hasn't been around the world very much. And I think that's totally fine. Like you spoke earlier, the Korean cuisine is having its decade now where it's just popping up everywhere. And eventually they will move into the same lane as the rest of us cuisine, and something else is going to come up. And I think that's a good thing. But I don't think it's faded. I definitely think it's still there.
Thank you for the pushback. It wasn't meant to judge at all. And of course, this is a
Absolutely.
media story more than anything. It's not the actual facts and real story. And if you go to like Copenhagen, go to Based, you're going to have some incredible pizza. You're going to have some of the best, you're going to have like great Asian cuisine in these cities. And these are amazing cities to visit. I love visiting when I can. And it was just meant about the media story, but I think you answered it really well that we kind of move on to new shiny things. And yeah, the food is not new Nordic. That's really funny. Are there any restaurants right now in Sweden that you're super excited about when you visit and go back?
Well, I was back a couple of weeks ago, being a judge at their best chef of the year, and I took the opportunity to eat around a little. It's been almost a decade since I went to Niklas, my friend's place, Ekstedt. He does everything wood fire. There's no electricity in his kitchen. Everything
Wow.
is by fire, which is very, very interesting. And I was very excited to eat there. And I also got the opportunity to see Ira again.
Mhm.
Uh, I was there probably 6 years ago when they had 1 star, and now they moved up to 2. So
Yeah.
it's nice to see the little differences that they made and trying to figure it out. So I think Stockholm or Sweden in general is an amazing city to go to, and you don't have to go Michelin star to have
No.
incredible cuisine. You can walk into any restaurant and experience it.
Well, I mean, I think people in Northern Europe spend on food. Like,
Hmm.
the budget at the end of the month, when you break it down, it's more than percentage wise than Americans. There's just a real appreciation and the
It's because
dollar.
we spend everything on rent here.
It's true. It's true. We can get into that conversation. We have a different government style and a different, I would say, economic style than in Northern Europe. It's a little different policy of taxes and all that. But that's a different
It's
conversation.
a different show.
That's a
Okay.
different show. I mean, I love those topics too. But like when you visit Stockholm, I mean, can you visit in February? Is that possible?
For many years, I would go home in beginning of March because it's my sister's birthday.
Yeah.
And I came to the point where I was just like, nah, let's not do this anymore. It's a beautiful city if the snow stays, but it a little wet and cold, and it's a different cold. Here, it can be in the thermometer, or like the temperature can show exactly the same as here, but you go there and you feel like you're 20 degrees colder for some reason. It's just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like when you want to visit countries, like
You want to go in the summer.
you want to go in the summer, but that's like literally every country. So like,
Yeah.
let's think. I mean, I'm like maybe it would be fun to go. I mean, if you're inside having some snaps, it's like not a bad gig, right?
Yeah. The only problem with Sweden in the summer is that every high-end restaurant closes for 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So you got to plan it. Go in the beginning or go at the end when they're not closed.
Back to the tasting menu question. We talked about the bar menu, but back to tasting. Like we've written on Taste how, tasting menus can feel exhausting and can be too long. And we've had some great commentary about that on our show. So what's the sell to come and have the big, long tasting at Aquavit? I'd love to get your take on why should we invest in this meal?
I think moving forward in general for guests is, or when you go to these restaurants, you need to see it as more as just, oh, I'm hungry, I need to eat. Like, this is sitting down for a dinner in a theater. Like, you're supposed to go there for an experience. Those 2.5 hours shouldn't feel like 2.5 hours. It should be an illusion. You should be there and you should be enjoying like little snacks after each other. And it's hard for a chef as well because you want to create a menu that's fulfilling enough, but I also don't want a guest to leave feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So you have to find that proper enough is enough, kind of
restraint.
But I think in general, when you get into higher end restaurants, it's not just getting full. Like, it's an experience. Like, if you go on Broadway and you see a show, think about seeing that show and having food in front of you. That's what a Michelin restaurant should be.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have guests who come in and they go, "Can you do a tasting menu in 45 minutes?" And I was like, "Sure. If you want to eat it in 45 minutes, I can cook it. It's up to you."
They end up not eating it though, right?
Oh, they do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They can keep up?
Oh, I've had guests, mostly single diners, so two tops who have to get to the airport.
Oh.
And they really want to try it, and yeah, they do it.
That's cool.
So,
I mean, that's cool when somebody feels so compelled to try your food that they're gonna like maybe miss a flight.
Yeah.
They can't nail it.
Right?
I mean, it's cool. Like it's praise. It's like, you know, if money is not really an option, as I think maybe that's the case in some of these situations, it's like, yeah, do the tasting menu. So you can do 45 minutes. Okay.
Well, don't quote me on that at 8:30 on a Friday night, but yes.
Yeah.
I've had that.
All right. This is a funny question, but I just can't let you leave without asking it. Do you have a sauna practice?
So I basically look for when I look for a gym in the city, my number one priority is the sauna, not the gym.
Right.
It's very important. Maybe not as important as if I were Finnish, but I do believe in the health benefits from it, and it makes me feel better, makes me start my day better, and I think more and more studies are coming out, right, about how good it actually is for you. So if I can at least go once a week, I'm happy.
Oh, wow. That's great. I mean, that's amazing. Hey, so your gym it has a good sauna. Okay. That's what about?
But it's hard to find in the city.
I know. I don't think I've been to a sauna in New York,
Yeah.
like proper New York. It's usually out somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the sauna is a time for meditation as well. You know, you get to be there with your thoughts. And thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a fan of the sauna when I can find it, but it's nice to know that you have a practice. On This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. I see you gulping. Are you ready?
Yes.
The best fruit.
Apple.
Okay, so we have to unpack that a little bit. First off, follow-up question. Swedish apples or upstate New York apples? What are better?
Swedish winter apples. They have to grow in the winter.
What's the pastry you just love using apples in?
Pie.
Yeah.
A crumble, like a crumble pie.
Oh, always the crumble lattice tops. Stop that nonsense. Always. Why would you not do a crumble? Obviously. The worst vegetable.
I don't think they exist.
They must. I'm not letting you leave this. You got to answer that.
Oh, I don't know. I love vegetables. I don't think there's a vegetable I don't eat. Can you count kiwi as a vegetable? No.
Well, in this land of ours, in this universe we've built, tell me about why you don't like kiwi.
Probably because it was everywhere when I was growing up in Sweden in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
There was kiwis on everything, every single cake, every pastry. I don't know. No.
It just takes you back
Yeah.
to like overuse and just forcing it into food.
Yeah.
Also in America, I recall in the 90s I had kiwis always at my table. I don't want to hate on kiwis. I like them personally, but I respect the answer. Okay, this is a good one. The best dessert.
Ice cream.
Okay, wow. Unexpected twist, but from a pastry chef, it makes sense. Okay, so when you're thinking about doing ice cream at your restaurant, do you have standard flavors or does it always change with what fruits?
Always change.
So what are you doing right now? What's the ice cream?
Ooh, we have a smoked yogurt one. There's not that many ice creams in the turn right now, but I think last year we had a and I say this with both love and not, because I love the rum raisin ice cream that we make. I don't like the one you buy,
Fair enough.
but I like the one we make.
That's it. That's nice that you can go counter to like we'll say Haagen-Dazs, maybe, just saying, maybe not the best one. I love Haagen-Dazs, but that's not the best one.
But I think as a pastry chef, I don't eat sweets anymore.
Okay, what do you
So
mean?
I don't like it. And if I go to a restaurant, I never order desserts.
This needs a follow-up. Okay, so you don't like eating sweets as a pastry chef. Is it because your palate has seen enough? Are you like, at your 150,000 miles, your car needs to be turned in?
I never, which is why pastry was never the thing for me in the beginning. I just never really, I had a couple of sweets that I loved. My grandma used to make this like chocolate cake. I love that. I love ice cream. But other than that, I've never been a sweet tooth person in that way.
Fair enough. It makes perfect sense. And you're obviously cooking throughout the spectrum now. So your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Stockholm.
You said the hometown. I like that. You've talked about why you love it. Respect that answer. A restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead?
Wow. There's a couple, but I think I always regretted that I never were able to go to El Bulli. But I would rather want to go back in time and do it.
Yeah, of course.
Than bring them back, maybe.
Right. Your favorite cookbook of all time?
The Nordic Cookbook.
Tell me about it.
It is literally my Bible at work. It is.
Who wrote it?
Magnus Nilsson.
Yeah.
And it's holding together by tape, I think, at the restaurant at the moment. But it just have everything. And I love his personal touch to everything. I think there's somewhere in there a quote about shrimp skagen, which is like a mayonnaise-based shrimp salad that we all love. And he wrote half a page on how disgusting it is to put red onions in it. And there's many variations of it, but he was just like, I cannot believe chefs are doing this. And so I love that it felt like he actually wrote it, or that he wrote it with, like, he worked on it.
Yeah. It's deeply personal for him. That book is amazing. Just the photography too, just paging through it. Are you guys friends, or do you guys know each other?
We do. I haven't seen him in a very long time, but I did help him out when he was promoting it in New York, well, in the USA, when it first came out. And almost every other day I go through it looking for ideas on how to twist recipes.
That's really cool that you flip back to that book so often as a professional. And is he opening a restaurant? Have you heard?
No.
Yeah.
It's the thing with him, right? You never know.
Yeah.
He's just that kind of spirit.
Yeah. We'll go back to the first season of Chef's Table. His Chef's Table is one of my favorites of all time, and a terrific trip. Thank you for sharing that about Magnus. Is there a recent favorite cookbook discovery of yours?
I was home in Sweden, and I took my parents to a restaurant for their birthday. They have birthdays 2 days apart, so I took them to a chef who just published a cookbook called Potatoes. And it's very interesting because potatoes are so dear to Swedish people. And I think that is the cookbook that I've got within the last
You're excited
year.
about it. Yeah. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
BLT, I think.
Yeah. Take me through the perfect BLT.
Ooh, I'm a bodega kind of girl, BLT. So I switch it around a little.
Yeah.
Got to be on a roll.
Ooh, I like that.
I know.
I like that twist.
We put a little bit of cheese in there.
I like this twist. Whoa.
And mustard. And then grill it.
Damn. And then grill it? Wow, we are just breaking. This is new. This does come up from time to time.
So I guess it's not a BLT anymore, but
a
little extra touch to it.
Little extra touch. Have you ever thought about doing a more casual sandwich concept idea?
Well, I am now.
Okay.
I'm thinking about it.
You're thinking about it
Yeah.
now. Okay.
We'll see.
We'll come back and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Emma, it was great to have you on our show. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Michael Stillman, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you, my man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Michael, before we get into this conversation, talk about quality branded and just all the restaurants you run, because you're a group, but you operate restaurants that are individual. Many wouldn't even assume they're in a group, and you're probably doing your job right if that's the assumption. But let's go over the roster.
We have a range of restaurants here in New York. Quality Meats, Quality Italian, Quality Bistro. Our restaurants. We also run the Smith Walensky in New York. My father founded it.
The big boy.
We have Bad Roman, Zuzu's, which is our Eastern Mediterranean restaurant. And we have a partnership with Scott Tessanelli and Angie Rito with Don Angie and now San Sabino down the West Village, which we're incredibly proud of. And we have a Quality Italian out in Denver, Colorado now too. And I think I have covered.
I think you did.
Most of
I
the
reviewed all
basics.
those restaurants. I've been to many of them. I must say, Denver is like kind of an interesting city, as you're only non-New York.
Yeah, it didn't start out that way, and we're continuing to look in other cities. We just ended up there by happenstance, but actually love it. Love it. It's an incredible city.
Well, you grew up in this legendary restaurant family. Your father, Alan, famously founded TGI Fridays. We know that name, but we don't quite know maybe the history of this restaurant. And you also founded Smith & Wolenski's as a family. So to summarize, what was it like growing up in this family with your father creating these legendary brands, but also many other smaller restaurants?
Lots of flair. Lots of flair. 39 pieces of flair.
Was that your dad's idea? Is that like your dad's thing, the flair?
Oh, my God. No. I mean, he founded TGI Fridays because his father was an accountant. He said, I'll do anything but. He, tried to do this, tried to do that, and he wanted to meet women. And he lived in the neighborhood, and he befriended a bartender on 63rd and 1st who wanted to sell his bar. And he said, well, I could make a bar. And, it was the early 60s, and there were all these, young people he wanted to meet. There were a lot of stewardesses who lived in a big building right in the area. And he said, well, if we make this bar a little more friendly, could have a hamburger, it could look nice. We'll put some Tiffany lamps up at the time.
Yeah, right.
It'll be a bar that, women feel comfortable going to, which was really, not a thing as much in the 1950s in New York. And that's how TGI Fridays started. It was sort of like a singles bar.
Yeah. He invented the singles bar, essentially.
Pretty much, he and Morton Leroy.
Yeah.
And, I think it sort of like grew from there into what it is today. Very different. And then in 1977, he founded Smith Walensky. And I think, it's funny because they feel very different. But I also think there's sort of elements that are very the same. They have like sort of iconic branding. They have a real sense of place. They have a like unique storyline. And, I think that's sort of, core to what he was all about.
Yeah, everything needed to have a story, right? A vision, right? It wasn't just a fancy French restaurant, which in the late 70s in New York was dominant, of course, Italian restaurants too.
Yeah, I think he kind of thought the opposite. He looked at some of the classic places, and at the time, there were a lot of sort of Italian steakhouses. They developed out of the 1950s, an Italian Crisella's, the Palm. There were sort of Italian restaurants developing the steak, and he thought there should be a singular American steakhouse. And at the time, American wines were just starting to become prominent, in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was like, there should be something that focuses iconically on American steakhouse, which seems so synonymous now, but that wasn't really what was happening in New York at the time. And that was really his vision for Smith Walensky.
And he wanted to do it at scale, right? It wasn't like a lot of times steakhouses are one like singular location in a town and that's it. But there was a level of entrepreneurship happening with Smith & Walensky, right?
Well, for sure. I mean, in the physical size of the Smith Walensky here in New York, which is gigantic. But it actually took him over 20 years before he did any others.
No way. I didn't know that. Wow.
Originally he had sort of smaller one-off restaurants throughout New York and, higher-end restaurants, different seafood, New American. And only in the 90s did he decide, hey, maybe this is something we want to, move outside of New York.
Yeah. Eventually IPO'd.
Eventually it IPO'd.
Which is tremendous for a restaurant group to IPO.
I mean, it's crazy and it's not really the norm anymore.
No.
It was sort of a freakish moment, but speaks a lot, I think, as much as anything to how iconic the brand and marketing he created. And I think that's one of the things that has been kind of a core element. And a lot of things I've learned was this sense of place, this sense of humor, this sense of style, and creating a singular event out of a restaurant was something that was very unique to what he liked to do. And I certainly grew up around that sort of interest in like art and creativity in a lot of different ways.
Let's talk about you growing up in these restaurants. What are your first jobs and how did you know that you wanted to be in this business from an early age?
Definitely not. Definitely not. In fact, my father was definitive that I should never go into the restaurant business, which is the perfect thing as a young parent. Now I know, like, the perfect thing to tell your kids is don't do this, right? His dad wanted him to be an accountant. He was like, nope. He was like, do not go into restaurant business. I was like, oh, seems interesting. I'll go work for Danny Meyer.
You're like, all right, you don't want me to work for yours. I'll work for this guy. So what is that like? Dang, I love that story.
It was great. I grew up with eclectic interests. My father came to restaurants more from like an entrepreneurial, vision of it. And he loved art. He loved traveling. And like, I think I grew up around those aspects of it. But then, after college, I studied, art history. I studied politics. I didn't know, like every other 22-year-old, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. And I ended up working for Danny, for a year, and it was incredible. I mean, I ran food and I checked, clothes. I, didn't know jack. I mean, less than jack. I think 4 years of like, higher education made me worse, for sure, worse. But it was an incredible team. I worked at Tabla at the time with Floyd Cardoz, Randy Grudy, who founded Shake Shack. Will Guidera was 1 year out of college, was working there as a floor manager. Dan Kluger. It was just this incredible team of people. And to watch them for a year, I think, really, and to understand the level of like care and thought, it made such an incredible impact on me. I think that was like a really incredible differentiator for me.
So eventually your father, Alan, you end up working in the family business. What's your first couple of jobs at the restaurant group?
Once I got done with Danny and I said to my dad, I really like this. He said, well, okay. He's like, Danny's great. That's fine. But, we got to test drive you for real. So we did two things. One, he said, you're going to go work for one of our stewards, and you're going to get up at 5 a.m. every morning and you're going to do like everything. And it was, every single element, all the stuff, the stuff I learned the hard way, exactly what it means, the scale, the operations, the understanding, the infrastructure, like all those pieces. And he was right. It's important to start there. In some ways, starting there after seeing that really set a like interesting foundation for me and a realization of how complex it is to do what we do on scale. And then he said, you got to do openings. And I ended up on the road doing 3 or 4 of our Smith-Wollensky openings for about 2-3 years. And openings are an incredible beast of a thing.
Oh my gosh. Your group is obviously very skilled at conceptual restaurants. I mean, TGI Fridays, for God's sakes. But I mean, I loved Park Avenue Summer, Autumn, Winter. I loved that restaurant that you ran years ago. You also have an eye for talent, scouting great chefs. So let me ask you, when you're thinking about opening a restaurant, how does the concepting work within the group? I mean, are you thinking about trends within the industry? Do you just want to open up a fresh idea that doesn't have a trend, that you're anti-trend? Because I look at this group of restaurants and I'm like, man, you've got a lot of concepts going on here.
A lot of concepts. I would say we handle it in a couple different ways. I've had a chef partner for over 20 years, Craig Kaketsu. He's incredible. And we really work hand in hand when we think about creatively. And I think we brainstorm a lot of different ideas, and there are a lot of different things that we love to do, but we sort of brainstorm them and we sort of have them to the side, just thinking on them. So we're always thinking about different things that we think would be interesting. You know, I like to approach a lot of things from our brand pillars, and more I try to really think about like what are the core elements that are true to ourselves, and it's taken time to really sort of develop into that and understand what fits for us. And then when we look at spaces and we understand what they are, I think we really like to take a step back and say, who's the audience here? Is there something that fits exactly who we are, something we're excited about doing that this audience would like? I think a lot of people have a conception, hey, I've got this amazing idea, so I'll put it here. But one of our big things is like, we call it egoless hospitality, but a lot of our vision is like, we always want to remember who the customer is. We always want to remember our guest. And I think for us, the big thing is like, hey, we could have a million great ideas, but do they want it? Do they want it for a while? Can we bring it if it's interesting? Is it interesting and sustainable? Like, can we put those two pieces together? So we sort of have to build both buckets, I think, to find the right thing that clicks together and be very cognizant that our ego doesn't get in the way too much.
So does it start with real estate then? Does like the restaurant start with the lease? Because it seems like that's the biggest expense and obviously the biggest decision.
I think like we germinate a lot of ideas, so we're always sort of germinating different ideas, and maybe, around a certain cuisine, or maybe around even like something else, an interesting prototype, whatever else. And we're always looking for places that fit kind of the scale and the feel that we think would be good, have an audience. And when 1 + 1, we're like, this for this.
Okay.
And it feels core to who we are and has a sense of what we'd be, that's when we try to move forward. So it's sort of putting the ideas and the place and the people together. And we think about it's not just a real estate. I really think about it's like, who is the audience?
Okay.
But
the real estate would dictate the audience a little bit because
right.
you're opening up in the Upper East Side versus downtown.
But I think we think less like, oh, this building, it's important. The space is important, but often we're like, we like to create within a space. It's about like, who's around here? Who would want this? Are we going to do something that they would think is pretty fucking cool?
I like that. Now, let's talk concepts. As I said, Park Avenue, Autumn Winter, I love that restaurant. Great concept. Yeah, it was cool. Really cool. Rotating a menu quarterly by the season. It sounds like a simple idea, but it was just executed really well.
The whole thing. We shut the restaurant down for 2 days.
Yeah.
We took the walls down, the uniforms, the music, the soap. We had different soaps. We had different matches.
Yeah.
It was really holistic. And I felt like it felt so campy, so ridiculous that you had to like thread the needle and do it so well for it to not, be. Yeah. And I think we sort of did it. And I think one of the ways that like I thought we did it well was we framed it as Seasons of New York in our heads.
You did.
We were like, this is about not just from a timing perspective, but like not like the season visually, like, falling leaves, but what would the restaurant feel like that you'd want to be in as a New Yorker now? Would it feel more festive in the winter? Would it feel more casual in the summer?
Yeah.
How could it, we were like, what would you want? And if a restaurant could have a through line, but feel like what you would be that restaurant that you would go to in that moment in New York.
Yeah.
That was our through line, both with the food and the design. And I think it really worked. We were like, that's that restaurant that you'd want to be there during that year. So we were like, it's a call to action because we all have those restaurants. You want to go to every spring, or if we could be that, we were like, that's cool.
It's such a concept. Who was your chef there?
Craig was my chef partner.
That's right.
Was our first chef originally.
That's amazing. And how many seasons did you end up going through before it closed? I feel.
Oh my God. Well, we went through like 7 years there.
Wow.
And then we moved to 26th Street, and it was actually incredibly successful. And then we closed in COVID only because they sold the building.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they did like 4 years renovating.
Are you going to reboot it? I feel like this like works.
We've looked around.
Yeah.
It's fun. I think sort of composed dining has changed a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's a really fun idea. And I've always been enamored with that idea, the idea of seasonality in terms of like that. I think of it as like the Brigadoon of restaurants, it appears and you're like, that's what I want just for autumn. And then it's gone. And then it comes back again. It was like 4 restaurants that disappear for 9 months a year was in my head, the way I visualized it. And that sense of fun and imagination got me going.
No, it's a very creative concept. What are some concepts that didn't work? Because I feel like I want to push you.
Oh God. Number one, though it's still like a fan favorite internally, was the Hurricane Club, which was our 350-seat tiki restaurant, high-end tiki supper club.
Oh my gosh. Was that like early 2000s?
It was 2010.
10, yeah.
I'll tell you honestly, if it was 150 seats instead of 350, I think it still would have worked.
Oh, wow.
It was very fun. There were elements that I look back and I show people and they're like, I cannot believe this. This would be like bonkers. And, that goes to show you it did not work. It didn't click. There were things that just made it not work. But in, every failure, even the most biggest failures, there's 1,000 little learnings, and that's the way you have to think about them.
Give me one more that didn't work, because I appreciate being honest, because you have so many successful restaurants. And I went to the opening party of Hurricane Club, by the way. I remember that.
It was 39 cocktails.
I know, it was insane.
We numbered all of them.
Because you nailed it. It was like right during the cocktail boom. Like, I think we were kind of, as a culture, Death and Company had been operating for 5 or 6 years. And now all these other concepts where the cocktail was centered.
Yeah.
That was such a time and place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our cocktail culture still seems to go and go and go.
Oh, definitely. It's not. It's not
trying to think. Well, we had a lot of quality eats for a while.
Yeah,
that was our neighborhood thing. And it's hard. I don't know if we closed them all recently. Frankly, they were very popular, and I think they had a great feel and fit to them. They were smaller neighborhood restaurants, and I think what we realized is there are people who are really, really good at that, really understand and know how to do it, and are sort of bigger restaurants. I wouldn't call them destination in the sense they're fancy, but that they have a certain sense of place and thing is really what we're good at. And, even though I think honestly people really like the product, we didn't know how to operate it the way that certain people know how to operate it. And it goes to show you how nuanced our business is and how many different versions of doing it right and wrong there can be. And it was another great learning. And it just like each time it makes me appreciate what somebody else does in our industry and how incredibly hard it is to run a diner or to run how incredibly cocky we are to say, oh, we could do that. Oh, we do this. Like, it's so nuanced, so many moving parts.
It's well said. I think that there's so many, hidden traps in the restaurant industry and actually visible traps and known traps that you as an operator step on constantly.
Yeah, but they're learnings. You had to be ready for that.
Yeah. You're behind Don Angie, and I want to know what draws you to Italian food in New York, a city that has a long history. This opening, took the city by storm almost immediately, and it's just there's some special sauce there, and it's not just the red sauce. There's like something going on. What's the secret to that success?
Obviously, it's our partners, Scott and Angie. I think one of the things that I've really loved is we've had a sense of legacy within our company, and a lot of the things we've done have really come from organic growth. Craig and I met because we tried to work on one of my father's old projects, Manhattan Ocean Club, and then we developed Quality Meats together, and then Park Ave. Scott and Angie started working for us at Park Avenue Seasons. Scott was a line cook, and Angie was a server. That's how they met. As a couple and how they developed, and they worked for us for the last 14 or 15 years. They, left for a small time to do a couple other projects, but they have worked with us organically, and we've sort of developed, different ideas together, different thoughts. And I think it takes a long time to build partnership and trust and relationship. And I think they are so incredibly talented. And I think there's a different level of insight to each other and belief in each other when you go into a partnership from an organic growth. And when we decided to sort of, back them and do that project. And we knew how talented they were, but we also knew each other. I wanted to find a designer for the project that was equally like it was their baby. And I went to two of my college roommates who were designers but never designed a restaurant. And I said, I think you guys are passionate and interested, and I think you will look at this like a singular baby the way my chef partners are. And I think that really added a level of just, it's really the food is the star and they're the star, but just there was a level of belief and faith and interest to getting it all come together that felt organic, really around all of our belief in them.
I mean, it feels like the
talent.
anti-Carbone in many ways, because I feel like the vibe in there is quite different, but there's similar threads that happen there. And some may say that's a good thing, some may say it's a bad thing, but I think for general New Yorkers, it might be a good thing.
It's funny. I went to high school with Jeff, so
Yeah,
I know.
yeah. You and Jeff, you guys are. That's funny that you both. Jeff is one of the partners at a major food group, and you guys are both running this town in many ways in the restaurant. Did you guys catch up? Do you guys have like a
Yeah,
meal?
yeah. I haven't seen Chef in a bit, but I see him now and again. I mean, he's done incredibly well, and I love Carbone. And
No.
I don't think we think of it as like the anti-Carbone or even in our heads. I mean, Scott and Angie are Italian. They're Italian American. They have real like thought and to what they're doing. But I understand what you're saying. It's a different view of the Italian landscape. That they go after. It's kind of what's fun about Italian is it is ubiquitous in American dining in a way that I'm not sure like any other cuisine has been over the last 50 years. It's historically intertwined with like a lot of American culture, and yet there's so many different threads and nuances to it. And like as an American and someone who grew up in restaurants, there's so much to that and so much subtlety and so much differentiation in just one place that's kind of cool to see. So
yeah, it's been a real success story. I'm going to zoom out a bit. I have some like general restaurant culture questions that I want to pick your brain about because I mean, the first is like, what the fuck is up with reservations? It seems that reservations are always written about getting reservations, about selling reservations. I know these are broad topics, but let me know, like, how are you feeling right now about the way your restaurants are booked? Is it fraught? Is it challenging? How do you think about it?
you know, I mean, first of all, I feel blessed a little bit.
Yeah.
After COVID, I think we feel like there's sort of been, and it feels like it was a long time ago, but like,
Yeah.
we still take a step back and say, I think there is a human outpouring of like desire for experience. And as lame as that story feels now, it's not trite in the sense that I think people want to spend their money being around and with other people. And that to me is nice to hear, like broadly speaking. Now, I will say, I think it shows how much technology has made restaurants potentially more viable in some ways for young restaurateurs, but also more fraught. And our business is notorious for being singularly hard to make money in. And I think the truth about reservations is, dynamic pricing is something that is sort of ubiquitous in most industries like ours. You go to Yankee Stadium, it's $8 or it's $12 for, the bleachers. It's not the same every day. You go to Motel 6, it's not the same every day. You go on a plane, it's not about the most luxurious piece. It's just there's differentiations to people's wants and demands. The truth is restaurants haven't been thought of that way, but they have all the levers that sort of necessitate some version of that. But it hasn't been possible. I think technology is slowly making that idea possible in some way, but you're seeing the sputterings and confusion around the in-between steps, and some of it feels ugly and disjointed and feels inorganic with our core view.
Yeah, like
our
paying for reservation.
Egalitarian view of restaurants, and I understand why. I think for me, if you take a step back and think about it in terms of, are there ways to develop restaurants, especially for small restaurateurs, where they can take advantage of technology and be able to like make their restaurant viable? Are there audiences at different times or different days? And like, how can they do that in a way that makes it work? Because we all know the 7 or 8 out of 10 restaurants go broke in, 2 years. And it's really, I mean, especially those small neighborhood, that adorable bistro that everyone cheers for, that like, is challenged so much because 3 nights of the week, everyone wants to get in. But what do they do on Sunday? And how did they do that? And how do they staff and seasonality? And like, I think there is a possibility here that for all sides, there could be a better end game.
So I'm hearing a lot here. I'm hearing first that, if there's a tiered system where certain hot tables cost more, that culture could really change the way restaurants think about their bottom line. The P&L could have a whole new line from premium seating. I'm also hearing a little bit about the way technology is allowing people to game the system and not game the system, and us getting over that hurdle of the gaming of the system and not gaming the system.
I think when you view it this way, I view it as, there's discounting. No one likes the word discounting, though you're happy to take a discount, but it feels, very uncomfortable. And there's, paying a scalper, paying for this, paying for that. And that feels, not egalitarian. But if you were to go to a Broadway show on a Sunday in January versus Friday in December, you would have different expectations, right? So if you take a step out from all these different individual people doing these different pieces, there's a spectrum where the cost to do business for a small restaurant and the ability to, give this person what they want on one side and this person on the other side could be viewed in a way that is natural and helpful. So I think it's both pieces, not just the premium, but also the discount.
No, well said.
It's making it all feel more fluid. I think now some of the technology, you're right, they're bots and things that are controlling. And one of the challenges is, like we don't like to take credit cards or, threaten to charge people or do all these things. But we have, I think 7% no-show, no calls.
Yeah.
It's a crazy number. Imagine for small restaurants, the inability, and the technology is making it harder to navigate. The only way to avoid that is to book too many tables, assuming someone will cancel. But if they don't, you have people waiting and they're angry. It's a real challenging matrix to sort of make sure you're taking good care of people, but make the numbers work. And I think, frankly, people like me are lucky enough. We have more flexibility. People think of it for Jeff or I, it's really about these small restaurant owners and like, how do they figure out how to navigate those things?
Yeah, it's well said. I think thinking about it from the other side, where like at a less prime time, there might be a discount provided, just like off the top of your bill. I mean, there's definitely a model that would work.
There's people who did this historically. Yeah. They're even like, you go an open table, you get 1,000 points of this or that, right? But it's viewed from the marketing of the restaurant as it looks ugly. And the premium looks ugly. But there's an audience for both. If you bought a ticket to a show, or you bought or you went on a vacation at two different things, you wouldn't feel like you would just say, well, one's December, one's January.
Yeah. I mean, the Broadway show is a great example. I think vacation is more challenging because of time of year and like there's more desirable. But man, if it's a Broadway show, it's the same show every night. And so you would imagine a restaurant is the same show every night. So to offer tiered pricing and kind of getting people in on Tuesdays and getting people in on Sundays, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It advantages both the restaurateur and the audience.
Yeah.
It allows like more variation. And if you think about it, why are all these they're all like that, right? Like there are really no hotels or shows airlines or whatever. They all have it because the system, functionally works for both the people and the thing. It's more complicated with restaurants, but technology will maybe make that possible.
How do you change the culture then, Michael? I mean, you're thinking about this and clearly you might be piloting some things. Do you have an example in your group where you've done this?
Look, it's challenging. We've actually shied away from a lot of it. We're not doing, a lot of these things in part because we don't want people to have those perceptions of us. And I think there's a lot of negative around either version, right?
You don't want to be a Groupon restaurant like that.
You don't want to be a Groupon restaurant. You don't want to be felt like you're fleecing people and you're elitist either. And that, we build bigger restaurants that should be fun, but we want a range of people to go to them. So the truth is, it's important. You don't want people to think about it either way. And yet you'd like to give a large audience all the things they want. So, I think it's a little bit industry, it's a little bit culture, it's a little bit talking to people like you and trying to frame the whole story in a different way. I think the people who would gain the most advantage, frankly, are small restaurateurs and customers.
Yeah, and those are two folks that we talked to a lot on the show. I mean, we had Ben Leventhal on a couple weeks ago, and what Blackbird's doing is interesting. He's thinking about patronage and thinking about how the regular can receive benefits. I mean, have you talked to Ben about Blackbird?
Ben's a close friend.
Yeah.
We're a partner, so we love Blackbird.
Great, you're on Blackbird. Perfect. I didn't know that.
We're actually one of the investors.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. The disclosure is out. So you're all about Blackbird, and Michael, you're obviously thinking similar to Ben, and I like this innovation. I like having you at this table and talking it through because, to my next question, we all are really thinking about restaurants in terms of pricing and the sticker shock that many are receiving, not just in cities like New York and LA, but like even in smaller towns. You see a price that just feels extremely uncomfortable, and then you see a bill that relates to the price is uncomfortable. How do you speak to customers when you're in your restaurants who might be getting that sticker shock feeling?
Hey, look, couldn't agree more. Frankly, we have sometimes in certain areas pulled back a little bit compared to, a lot of our competitors. We're still in the high-end range, but if you look at high-end New York, there are people where substantially higher than us, and I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I understand where it's coming from, because I understand the cost behind it. But one of the things I think we have to be careful of is you can't just take costs and charge based on that. You can't use percentages. You have to understand what the audience is willing to pay sustainably, what they can pay over time, So, I think restaurateurs have to be thoughtful, about, thinking long term. Just because you can or you have to doesn't mean it will work. You have to think about it from another way. And I think, there's a little, nerves on my end, frankly, to push too hard. And even our restaurants, I think, have gotten really hard. I mean, we're in an inflationary period. You're seeing it with everything. So there's an element where everything.
You look around and your grocery bill.
Everything went up 25% in 3 years. It feels like a lot, but things are up too much, and I think people have to be careful.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it sounds like there's two ways to look at it. One is that it's inflation and it's just a cost and it's a percentage. But then the other way, and I'm kind of interested to poke at this a bit more, it's also the restaurant's obligation to think about their customer and figure out, just make it work. I mean, how do you do it?
Look, one of the things I say to my chefs a lot, especially at the high end, is you can't run a food cost on a dish and say 35%. Okay, they cost me this, so I'm going to charge this. At the high end, the value is about the customer's opinion. It's about our guests. Do they love that? Are they willing to pay a premium for it? Do they love the experience? They're paying for the food, the service, the place, and they're paying for certain things. If it's signature, if it's unique, if it's that, I think you have to frame, what things cost to what your guest believes they should cost or what they want to pay for. And I think a lot of people don't take a step back. It's sort of like you get them all the great ideas in the world, but they are the decision makers.
No, brother.
They're in the driver's seat.
You're the owner, you're the boss.
And look, if you think about it that way, there are advantages too. There are dishes that can be way more expensive than that percentage, but the customer's happy to pay for them. So there are ways to defray your costs by focusing on where your customer finds value. If you're willing to think from their eyes, you may be able to. It's not just about being less expensive. It's about charging for the right things based on what they believe is worth the value.
I'm hearing a lot of things, and I like where you're going, because you're basically you're like, chef, your food costs need to chill. You can't just do your vision of everything. You can't you have to have some restraint. And part of your job is to balance that.
I would say not even that. I would say when you're thinking about pricing a restaurant, you might say, well, this costs this much, so I need to charge, X amount more. And this costs this much. But if everyone loves your Caesar salad and its signature, right, you may be able to charge a premium because that's what people want. So therefore, maybe this higher food cost item that is really unique and a cool thing, you can discount it a little more because, it's a smaller audience. So you won't make quite as much on that dish, but you'll make overall more money as a restaurant. And the customer who gets that more unique dish is happy. You didn't go crazy. And the customer who loves that signature Caesar salad is happy. You've given them what they want. You've covered your costs just in a different way.
Yeah, a different way, because the hits are the hits. You're a hits business. Similar in book publishing.
It is a little bit like
you
that.
gotta have your
And it's similar to pricing. You're making both groups happy.
I love it. Well, let's talk about Bad Roman. It's a restaurant that people really love and people seem to hate. And it feels like it's always busy, which is a great combination. I mean, talk about this restaurant. It's been one of the bigger openings in New York.
The way you describe the restaurant sounds like the way my wife describes me.
I mean, I think a little controversy. It's funny. I think a little controversy about an opening is a good thing. You can't just be all shower
For
with
sure.
praise.
And we knew it when we did that restaurant. You call a restaurant Bad Roman. Yeah, you're looking for a little bit of a fight. But, look, honestly, it was coming out of COVID. It was an exhausting and incredibly serious period as a New York restaurateur. And we just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do something irreverent. And we have a big push about an irreverent sense of humor in our company. And we're like, look, some people will not like that. We've heard it for years. But, hopefully over time, we back up that with a level of consistency and service. And sometimes it takes time and there have been hiccups. But I think our restaurants have lasted decades because there is a fundamental level of a good product behind everything we do. But we're not trying to be super, super serious. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to engage. And, coming out of COVID, we just said we really want to go all the way there.
What are we ordering at Bad Roman? I don't want to let that pass. Let's talk about some food.
I mean, we have Roni cups, which, is very, challenging, but who doesn't want to just eat the pepperoni? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like all my kids do. I'm like,
Dude.
It's just as simple as that's what you want.
It's just the Roni cup.
It's just the Roni cups, but we have a little side of ranch. My chef partner, Craig, comes from California, loves ranch dressing. We used to have ranch on the Park Avenue menu, and he works it in everywhere we go. We have a range of stuff. I mean, we have some really funny over-the-top stuff. We have a cacio e pepe, ravioli filet, but then we actually have some stuff. We have my favorite dish is sun gold pasta with shrimp, and all of our pastas are made in-house. They are all done to order. They're all done the correct way, and there's a range of what they do. There's some really outrageous ones. There's some that celebrate the season. It's a little bit of everything.
What's it like operating over at the Time Warner Center? And I'm using the dated name. I believe it's probably called something else, but it's whatever it is. What's it like? What's it like operating over there?
It's interesting. I would say, look, I think Related are great partners.
Yeah.
And, even though there are some restaurants that have been there a long time and they've had, their lauded opinions and they're less, I think fundamentally it's still sort of now an iconic building in New York, and it drives a wide range of New Yorkers. And truthfully, we like that.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
Business people, it's tourists, it's young kids from the Upper West Side. It's not super sexy Soho. So okay, but it is a range. And if you come to New York, or you've been to New York, or you work in New York, or you live in New York, you go through there. And we like that sort of audience. We like to do things that are fun for a wide net. So I like it.
I'm all about it. I love you being a sport to answer that question, because I feel it's a really talked about restaurant. It's kind of what you want. So
it's what we want. And you know what? We take it all with stride. We take the negative criticisms seriously, but we take it in stride, and the positive criticism.
What restaurant trends are you keeping your eye on right now for possible future projects you post?
Well, I mean, there's definitely some genres like Mexican we've always wanted to do. My chef partner, is from San Jose. And we love, I love traveling to Mexico City. Of it. There's some other cuisines that we love. I travel South America a lot, and I think there's still a lot of countries and areas and things. I go to Colombia a lot, and there's just some awesome foods I don't think are represented as much in the right way. Um, you know, um, I think there's so many interesting things going on right now. There's a lot of different there are a lot of small plates. I think it'll be interesting to see some of those genres move back into sort of medium or larger boxes, but still be innovative and cool. I think of sushi, which I love. It became so high-end omakase. I sort of said, other than sugarfish
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say
$250 omakase, where are the interesting ideas that are $75 or $100 for someone who wants to spend? I haven't seen them. And then Uchi, and they're incredibly talented, are starting to build around, and it's an incredible product. They do
Uchi
an
is great. Their
amazing
expansion's been
job.
an amazing watch.
And you look at the Blue Ribbon guys, and I went there last month, and they still put out an incredible product. And I'm like, there's room in sushi, which is so popular, for something in between.
Something you have your eyes on a concept, perhaps.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of room there. So that there's still gaps.
What about young talent? Any chefs that come to mind that you really enjoy?
I mentioned Chintan. I think their whole group is incredible, and I like some of the young chefs they propped up. A chef who, I worked with a while ago, but Ryan Bartlow, who, owns Ernesto's. It's just incredible. He got some good press when he opened Ernesto's, but he's still just one of the most outstanding and interesting chefs out there in my mind. And I think, Spanish food is one of those foods that restaurateurs love to talk about and love to appreciate, but you still haven't seen, you have Ernesto's, you've Casimono, you don't see the level of things that you would love to see. So
it's a difficult concept to market at times. I think people,
I think
talking back to the value, there's customers who definitely don't see the value in that style of dining can be challenging.
For sure. And I think they just are not as familiar because I think Spanish food is actually very eclectic and there's a lot of uniqueness to it. So it's not easy to define.
I love it. On This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
Do it.
The best fruit.
Kumquats.
Ooh, I love that. What is a good kumquat in season? What does it taste like?
Oh my God. They're sour,
Yeah.
a little sweet. Use them with a cocktail, saute them.
Yeah, it's a great one. I love that call. The worst vegetable.
For me, okra.
Yeah. Okra's been taking strays, been getting hit all week.
People love okra, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's a challenge. The best dessert.
Lemon bar.
I love that. My Midwestern heart beats.
Lemon bar, simple, elegant, sweet, tart.
Yeah, and you can elevate it too in cool ways. I love that. The restaurant you are most excited to visit in the world.
I'm going to Spain soon, Elcano.
Oh, cool. That's on the world's 50 list, right? Yeah.
I've never been, but it's all about simple fish.
Yeah.
It's been around a multi-generation. I'm always excited to see that sort of thing, somewhere where it's sort of singular focus a little bit and has a sense of history and family to it. So really excited to try that.
Is that like a research trip or a fun trip? What do you do? How do you like to travel?
I like all of the above. I mix and match. It's a trip with friends, but there'll always be some research as long as I need to eat.
Okay, this is a big one for you. A restaurant you wish you could bring back from the dead.
Not one of mine, but one that I never really got to experience, Maxwell Plums. It was Warner Leroy's restaurant across the street from my father, TGI Fridays. Warner invented, Tavern on the Green, the Russian tea room. He was a larger-than-life, iconic restaurateur when I was growing up and just an incredibly unique human being. And that was his first baby, and I always wanted to see it in its prime.
There was a great piece about that in that New York Magazine throwback restaurants issue about Maxwell Plum.
For me, I remember my father, used to talk about, they used to shut down First Avenue with people going back and forth between the two of them. I would have loved to see that, and I would have loved to see what it was like.
Do you think Mad Men captured the restaurants of that era well?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. For better and for worse.
For better and for worse. It's so many iconic restaurant scenes in that show. And I think TGI Fridays is in the show at some point. It's a good one. Do you feel like there could be a show based around a restaurant at that time? Period.
Oh,
TV
yeah,
show?
for sure. For sure. I mean, one of my favorite movies, Big Night,
Oh, of course.
and that's a little like 1950s, a
Yeah.
little, but I mean, so perfect.
I know. I think maybe with the success of The Bear, we'll see some period restaurant dramas or some comedies
Would be fun.
come out. Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
We talk Spanish a little, but Mexico City.
No way.
Mexico City, just love it.
Yeah. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
All right, I shouldn't say it, but I kind of like a fillet of fish.
You don't have to say that. You can speak up to the mic. I love it.
Fillet of fish.
You know what? Let's break it down. You got this one. You're a guy who has a good palate. Why do you like that one so much?
I mean, in some ways, I actually think it's the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's irreverent. It's like a tuna melt, which is probably my really iconic favorite. Love a tuna melt, but it feels like it shouldn't be right, but it works.
Yeah, the sauce, the cheese, hamburger bun, huh?
It just works, and when it shouldn't work, but it does, it's pretty special.
I love it. Michael Stillman, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you for having me.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.